Hello and welcome everyone. We're so glad you're joining us for this virtual presentation. My name is Liana Harden. I work in community engagement with THPRD, and I'm serving as the meeting facilitator for this meeting. I'm supported by a co-facilitator, Peter Swinton, who is a planner with THPRD and is reporting from our office during this meeting and so wearing a mask for public safety during this video. We want to first say thank you to all our community members who are joining us for this presentation and discussion, whether that was live or on YouTube. We're excited to share about this project, and we look forward to continuing to hear your input because your participation over the course of this study is critical to improving our understanding of your needs. We thank you for being here with us and spending your time with us. Before we start the meeting and review the agenda, I'd also like to take a moment to share about our facilitation process. We have recorded this meeting and sharing a recording of this meeting on the project's webpage to provide another avenue for everyone in our community to learn about the project. During this meeting, at any time, community members could use the chat feature to send questions or comments to the facilitator. During the meeting, we have participant cameras and microphones turned off. This helps ensure that everyone can hear and see the presentation. Our intent here is also to ensure that the meeting is a safe place for all attendees, especially families and all ages. But during the question and answer portion of the meeting, we wanted people to feel that they could engage in a dialogue with us. So during that portion of the meeting, we encouraged attendees to ask questions using the chat. We accepted questions from our community members ahead of this meeting, which we made an effort to address as much as possible during the presentation and also during the question and answer portion of the agenda. If you have any questions that come up for you after this YouTube recording, please feel free to email us at any time. We are happy to help answer questions and take your comments.
So for our agenda this evening, we'll start with a presentation including a project overview and timeline. Then we will talk about next steps and move into the question and answer portion of the agenda. All right, so now we're ready to move into the presentation, and I'd like to introduce our presenters. We have Janine Rustads, our THPRD Planning Manager, and we will have Scott Richmond presenting, our Consultant Project Manager with Jacobs. So I'll let them continue to introduce themselves as they take the virtual floor, and I will hand it over to Janine Rustad to start the presentation. Go ahead, Janine.
Thank you, Liana. As Liana mentioned, my name is Janine Rustad. I'm the Planning Manager at Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District, or THPRD. I'm also the Project Manager for the Westside Trail Bridge over Highway 26. I also wanted to mention that I am one of your neighbors. I am one of the recipients of that mailing. So this isn't just a project for me. As a runner, a biker, someone who likes to avoid the car as much as possible, this isn't just a project, as I said. This is going to be a trail I use and a trail that hopefully eventually will be near my backyard. I also want, Scott, if you could introduce yourself. You've most of the THPRD team. I should mention that we also are using the assistance of one of our design planners, Tim Bonin, who is not on this meeting tonight, but does round out our team. So Scott, if you want to introduce yourself and let us know who's on the Jacobs team.
Yes, thank you, Liana, and thank you, Janine. Yeah, my name is Scott Richmond. I'm a project manager and transportation planner with Jacobs, and so I'm the consultant team project manager. We have a bridge lead, Robbie Coombs, who's also with Jacobs. He's not on the call. We have a trail design lead, Sharon Dalio, who's with one of our consultant partners with Tool Design Group. We've got some other consultants who have done various services for the project. I'll talk a little bit more about the results of their work. And that includes One Alliance, who has done the survey, Rhino One, who's done geotechnical work, and then we're going to be getting some constructability support from Brett Schneider. So that's the consultant team.
Thank you. So as you can see, we've brought in some crucial experts for a project of this scale. So before I jump into the agenda, I wanted to acknowledge that this is my first virtual community open house. It is not my preferred format. Would much rather be in a room with all of you, being able to mingle and talk, not only for this project, but for so many reasons, as we're 7 months into largely staying at home. But I am grateful that we do have this opportunity to share information with you this evening and throughout the project. That being said, I hope you'll bear with any technical glitches we may have. So jumping in, starting with the trail overview, for those of you who aren't familiar with the Westside Trail, once it's completed, it will be a 25-mile trail that spans from the Tualatin River to the south, up through to Bethany, and then east into Portland and the Willamette River. A good segment of this trail, I think roughly 10 miles, will be within our district. So the bridge is, or Highway 26, I should say, is a large barrier for connectivity. We applied for funding for this project to get a sufficient level of design to allow us to get a cost estimate to pursue funding of the bridge. These cost estimates are very important, especially if we get federal dollars, because we need to have that certainty to know how much we have to come up with for a match. This project isn't intended to get us through engineering and design, but inform us of what will be needed for future permitting. So before I zoom in to the project area of the trail, we have been asked why this location for this bridge. And I wanted to mention, this is a map from the Westside Trail Master Plan that was a Metro project undertaken between 2012 and 2014. During the master planning for the whole 25 miles of the trail, Metro did look into other options. They explored using Murray Boulevard to the east or Cornell Boulevard to the west. These crossings were deemed to be too out of the way for the proposed trail alignment and not active transportation friendly. As you can see here, that the proposed alignment is through the BPA corridor, which makes this the logical location for a crossing. So zooming then into our project area, it includes the approaches to the bridge from the south, so southwest Greenbrier, up to northwest Cornell Road. Excuse me, I do have cheat sheets, which if I use them, they tend to be a crutch. So we're looking at both those approaches. That does leave a segment of trail to the south that we need to complete, and we are coordinating with the county on an alternatives analysis to look at getting the trail from the southwest 158th and southwest Walker Road up to the bridge landing. We are also starting to investigate funding options for this northern segment of trail up to where we just completed what is segment 18 of the Westside Trail at Northwest Kaiser Road. So it begs the question, why are we looking at the bridge? Well, one is to be able to get those cost estimates and pursue funding. But our hope is to get both the bridge and the southern leg of the trail under construction at the same time, hopefully 3 to 5 years from completion of this project. But even without that southern connection and the northern connection, the bridge will provide important connections to transit. We have the bus to the north, the MAX to the south, as well as the homes, jobs, shopping, and of course, recreation with some of our other amenities. So threading the needle, this is something that Jacobs used as we started getting into this project, and it illustrates why this phase of the project is so important. One of the reasons we're doing this is to determine how we can fit the bridge in through the constraints that you'll hear Scott talk about more this evening. We've got the BPA power lines that run north-south. We've got PGE power lines that run east-west. Of course, the highway itself, wetlands, a stream, and changes in grades from north to south. So again, what we're doing right now, the current funding we have is to get a design concept, not the ultimate engineering for the bridge. We're looking at the baseline survey of environmental studies, and you'll hear about those this evening. And of course, what's going to be the best pathway, because we have the federal permitting. This bridge and the abutments will be both within the city and the county. So we face a lot of challenges. With this, I think I will hand it over to you, Scott. If you have anything else to add on this slide, let me know. If not, I will advance slides for you.
Sure. Yeah, and appreciate that. I'll just make a couple of notes. So the survey, we had a very detailed topographic survey done, and that unmanned aerial vehicle, UAV or drone image that Janine provided earlier was actually taken by our survey consulting firm, One Alliance. So they have a number of aerial views that they took on each side of Highway 26. I'll be talking a little bit about the key findings from the environmental studies. We are, as Janine mentioned, early in a concept development process, with the idea being to develop enough information and gain approval, including approval and incorporate input from you and other stakeholders involved to be able to refine to a preferred concept that we can then develop more confident costs. And part of that is to identify what permitting and approval needs will need to go through going forward. So for those of you who don't know what that NEPA or NEPA acronym is, that's National Environmental Policy Act. So if THPRD needs support from the federal government, including some federal funding, that would be through Oregon Department of Transportation and Federal Highway Administration as a lead. We also know that we're planning and developing design concepts within right-of-way owned by Bonneville Power Administration, which is a federal agency, and so we are coordinating with them in terms of what their approval process would need to be too. So Janine, you can probably go to the next one from there, and the next one. So Janine talked about the context of the project study area. Part of our background work was to really understand who are the users or the potential users of this section of trail, including the bridge. And so part of that was a demographic analysis using data that Metro, the regional government, has and embedded in their travel demand model and travel forecasting model that include such information as population, age, people with ownership of vehicles, and incomes. One of the key pieces of information that we discovered is that people traveling in this general area tend to have lower incomes than those of the Washington County overall. We also used a service that we call Streetlight. I didn't mention them as a subconsultant, but they're a separate company that deals with big data and synthesizes that into information that can give us clarity about the types of modes that people are using and where they're traveling to and from, and it basically uses information from our smartphones, and it is anonymized, so they don't have private information that they share, but we can correlate that to some of the zone information about the general characteristics of the people making trips within this area. So we had information about people traveling in this general area that's outlined, and this area was divided further into 8 different sub areas. So we're able to get information such as the total number of trips by people driving, people riding bicycles, number of people riding bicycles, and people walking. And the streetlight information also allows some disaggregations in addition to the trip origin and destinations, including travel time and distance, and that provides information about how people are traveling, and then the average daily trip volumes by the zone that Streetlight used, and then TAZ, which is a travel analysis zone, which is a geography breakdown that Metro uses for their travel demand model. It also provides disaggregation by time of day and days a week. So you can go to the next slide. So what we found for existing and potential for walking and biking in the area, and that a lot of trips are already made by walking and biking. So people are using active transportation, but Highway 26 is very much a barrier to people feeling comfortable and actually traveling across the highway north to south by walking or bicycling. We do know from our both our Metro and Streetlight data that a lot of the trips are less than 3 miles, and so that provides a lot of opportunity for trips that may be now made by vehicle to be shifted to bicycle or potentially walking. We focused on, for example, the zones that have Sunset High School and then the THPRD main recreation complex, 158th and Walker. And we clearly show that there's high demand between those general zones as well as neighborhoods to the north and south. So we were very confident that a new bridge roughly halfway between the Cornell and Murray interchanges, which are the only options for people to walk or bike north and south across Highway 26 right now, could provide a much more direct route. In particular benefits to people of lower incomes and communities of color. Go to the next one. So that's some context about the opportunity, the characteristics, and the potential for some of the use. This gives a little bit of context about the land use, and then I'll get into the environmental. So this is really showing that there's a mix of land uses. It's predominantly right in the study corridor we're looking at is primarily industrial uses, and it's surrounded by residential areas. And of course, on the north side, we've got Sunset High School and then the THPRD Swim Center. Then to the south, we've got THPRD's facility. We've got a lot more commercial uses closer to Walker Road. And then, as Janine mentioned, we've got major employers on both sides of the highway, and then we've got a MAX line to the south too. So there's potential for trips between major transit stations and where people live and work. This also shows that the project area is primarily within unincorporated Washington County, but it's right on the edge of the city of Beaverton, and so we're looking at what land use approvals will be needed both from the county and Beaverton to advance and implement the project. And as we mentioned, it's primarily BPA right-of-way that we're looking at in terms of the location for the bridge and section of trail. You can go to the next one. One of the major constraints, in addition to major electrical transmission lines, is a little over an acre wetland area on the north side of Highway 26. And part of that wetland is within the study corridor, the BPA right-of-way. And there's a tributary, an unnamed tributary, sort of relatively small stream that cuts across the project area. And it flows through a pipe under Highway 26. We learned from Columbia Sportswear representative that they have to go out and clear out this drain area on sort of the left side of this image on the north side of Highway 26 because it backs up and causes some flooding. So there's debris that gets in there frequently. But this large wetland area, part of our challenge is to try to minimize impacts to that area. And in addition to the wetland itself, Clean Water Services has a 50-foot buffer around that wetland that we need to consider for permitting as well. It's a riparian protection area. Go to the next slide. We did a botanical survey, so a plant survey, one of our biologists, and she discovered that thankfully there are no protected plants, so there's no Endangered Species Act protected species, neither for the federal government or the state. It's primarily noxious and invasive weeds, and it's a marginal habitat for special status plants. And it's this map shows that there is actually a couple of different wetland types: emergent wetland and a forested wetland. And then it shows different types of vegetation, some of which is ornamental, landscaping around some of the private lots, and then what she termed as herbaceous vegetation within the corridor. And then there's some parking areas as well. Go to the next one. So I talked a little bit about biological resources. There's no protected species or critical habitat. There's a tributary to Willow Creek, and Highway 26, I should mention, is likely a complete barrier to fish passage in this tributary. So if anyone's seen any fish, let us know. But we don't see that as a candidate for it. And go to the next one. We also did some research and a survey of the site for historic area properties. So those are properties to be historic. They need to be 50 years or older. For planning purposes, we look at properties that are 45 years or older, recognizing that the project could be implemented, as Janine mentioned, within 5 years. So the highway itself is over 50 years old. The BPA transmission line, which is the large north-south lines on the east side of the right-of-way, and then the Oregon City to St. John's transmission line, which PGE owns, and they lease that from BPA in terms of their land for that. That runs north-south on the west side of the right-of-way. The Oaks apartment complex on the northwest side, so just south of Cornell Road, west side of the BPA right-of-way. And then the LifeWorks Northwest housing between Science Park Drive and the BPA right-of-way just south of Cornell Road. And so part of the approval would be that both the transmission lines, our historian determined that they would require National Historic Preservation Act determinations of eligibility to the National Register of Historic Places. So we're not actually doing that right now, but that would be the next part of the preliminary engineering process through environmental approval. So that might have been the last. Oh, archaeology too. No discoveries of any archaeological resources. So we had our archaeologist do some desktop research, and then went out on site and conducted shovel test pits, and he found nothing, no historic or prehistoric artifacts, and recommended no further study for that. And then I should also mention that we also did a survey. We did a study for any recorded hazardous materials sites, and we didn't find any issues right within or adjacent to the project area either. So you can go to the next one. All right. So we are at the very beginning. We've assessed really the challenges, as Janine mentioned, threading the needle. These are a couple of shots from the drone. So the one on the left is on the south side of Highway 26. It's looking to the north. The one on the right is on the north side that's on the south side looking south. And certainly the transmission towers and the lines themselves are a constraint that we need to try to work around. The utilities have told us that their desired clearance is 25 feet horizontal from any vertical element. So that's not necessarily the path that's at grade, but it's the ramps and as the bridge approaches elevate to get over the highway. That we need to be coordinating in terms of trying to minimize our distance from those towers. And we've been continuing to coordinate with both BPA and PGE throughout our process. We can go to the next slide. We also need to, bring the bridge and trail approaches over Highway 26. ODOT's standard for the clearance from the highway grade to the bottom of the structure is 17 feet and 4 inches. That's in their bridge design manual. And we've been also coordinating with ODOT. We also need to make sure that we have the bridge abutments cleared away horizontally sufficiently from the highway shoulders itself. This is showing an aerial view of the north side of the project area, and there's a relatively short distance to try to come down, bring people down via ramp and structure from the bridge to the north down to Columbia Way, and to try to meet grade at Columbia Way, where bicyclists and pedestrians, people walking and riding bikes, can access the trail from Science Park Drive, where there's a crossing, there's a protected crossing right at Columbia Way on Science Park Drive. So there's our challenge is to try to bring the trail and the bridge and trail over structure, which would be a combination of some ramped structure and likely boardwalk over this wetlands area with a minimal number of columns or supports needed to impact that, to minimize impacts to that wetland area and come down to grade at Columbia. And then to the right, to the north of Columbia, we would continue the trail up to Cornell. And we've gotten feedback that, if there's a way that we can minimize impacts to Columbia's parking, we'll look at that too, but we want to stay within that BPA right-of-way. You can go to the next slide. This is closer to a ground view, that same area, looking at some of the challenges. There's some topography that we need to get through, and this is roughly where the stream cuts through the wetland area. So it's still relatively dry at this time of year, but we get a month or so down the road after we've gotten some rain, and that's a pretty boggy area. And so we can try to span that with boardwalk and ramp to come down to grade at Columbia Way, and to try to stay sufficient distance from those utility towers. Go to the next one. These concepts, both the plan view on the top and then the profile view on the bottom, are very preliminary. We are working with THPRD and others to optimize this alignment. I should mention that the profile concept on the bottom is exaggerated. So those horizontal lines represent 5 feet of vertical distance, and this represents, so the number 1 is where the basically the center of the bridge structure, and that blue line there just below the 1 on the bottom side, right, is the bridge deck. So this is a conservative, based on a higher profile bridge type. We've had some coordination with THPRD where there's a truss type that I'll talk about in a minute, which allows for the bridge deck to be a little bit lower, so that we don't have as much grade to deal with in terms of ramping down. That number 2 corresponds with the center line of Highway 26. There would need to be a structural support in the median Highway 26. Highway 26 has other bridge structures that include a median, and there's sufficient space to do that, thankfully. It lowers the potential cost of the bridge, not having to span the entirety of Highway 26 without a center support column there. Number 3 on the image is representing Columbia Way, where I mentioned we need to meet grade there. And you can see, even though it's exaggerated, there's some grade challenges that we need to deal with. And we're looking at a combination on the north side of Highway 26 of ramp, which would be metal and concrete likely, and then boardwalk, which could be concrete, and then a wood composite material that the THPRD has used on a number of other smaller structures crossing through wetland and stream areas. And then to the right of that 3, we would be rising up to meet the to stay at grade and connect with Cornell. So that might be the last. Oh no, bridge types, of course. Go ahead. Just some basic information about the bridges, and we're getting into more detail about that. So as I mentioned, there'd be a support column in the median of Highway 26, roughly 125 feet per span, plus or minus. The bridge width we're looking at is, so the trail width would be 12 feet for a walking and biking surface with 1 foot shoulders, so a total of 14 feet wide. The bridge deck width itself would be 14 feet wide, and then with other structural support, handrails, likely fencing. We'll need to have protective fencing so people can't throw things off the bridge. It would be roughly a 16-foot width wide, and the total bridge area is approximately 4,000 square feet. I mentioned already the 17 feet 4 inches vertical clearance. That's ODOT standard. We will be, as we develop and refine the concepts, coordinating with Oregon Department of Transportation, or ODOT. Those span lengths are fairly typical, and many bridge types could fit